You know, it seems like at the beginning of these segments, I just keep on saying, well, this is important, and then that's important, and this is important. Well, here is something that was very important to me because it is probably the single most strategic incident in making me a believer and no longer a skeptic, and that is healing. Okay? Healing is the principle is very simple. Once again you understand that everything that you are in terms of physical matter is first of all is actually energy. Okay? So doesn't it make sense to you to say that if you're healthy, this energy is vibrating and has a frequency at one particular level, and if you're not heavy, that rate of vibration or level is different? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, doesn't it make sense also that higher levels of vibration would have an effect on the lower levels? The higher levels being the spiritual energy that go to make up your consciousness and your being, as opposed to the physical body. All right. Now, when I say it was important to me, this is why. I know I've mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. As I became involved with this, I was skeptical. And I went through a series of events that each event, step by step, made me a little bit more open-minded and a little bit more open-minded. The healing was the clincher. I developed a ruptured disc in my back, and I mean, it was painful. I could only stand up for like 5 or 6 minutes at a time. Now in sales, like I mentioned, I was in sales. I go in to see a client, and it's a little bit awkward to say, gee, you got a place I can sit down because I'm going to go into pain here if I don't. But that was the situation. I went to a woman here in the next town, Schenectady, and I had met my guide, my spirit guide, through her, and I received a healing. That was on a Friday. I remember the day. And Saturday morning, my wife and my kids went out. They were at the store shopping. And all of a sudden, I went into so much pain that I was rolled up on the floor of my family room. I called the woman and said to her, this is not a healing, this is a hurting. And she said, no, sometimes you have to go through this in order to accomplish the positive results. Now, the closest thing that I can think that happened is, you got to remember, a nerve had been pinched going down the left side of my body, down my left leg. A portion of my thigh was numb, and it was very painful. But the impulses had been shut off to a very substantial degree. And I believe what happened is that the impulse of the pinch or the problem with the disc was solved, and the impulses started to flow again, and the muscles just went into a horrendous spasm, which is where the pain came from. Because about 4 or 5 days later, all my symptoms that I had just started going away. And I've never had anything done in terms of anything to my back as far as surgery was concerned. And surgery is what they told me was a solution, and in fact was the only solution. So I mean, this is a pretty convincing thing. Now, I've talked to people who are in the medical field, and I can remember one of them said, well, you know, this is a wonderful anecdote. You know, this is a nice story. And I wrote back to him and said, you know, this is not a story. I mean, I was really hoping this would work. And he said, oh, yeah, it must be a placebo effect. Well, placebo doesn't work that way. You have to absolutely believe. And I didn't. I was just hoping it would work. Now, I felt that I just couldn't sit around and not share this information. So in the group that I put together, that we were teaching to develop these abilities, we formed a healing group that met once a week, and people came and received healing at no charge. And I should mention that over the 30 years that I've been doing this, I have never charged, or anything associated with our group has ever charged anything for a healing, because I very firmly believe that this type of service is meant to be shared, not sold. It's an ethical thing. I've seen some wonderful things happen. It doesn't work in every case. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it does. There are some cases where people, for reasons that I'm not totally aware of, go through this situation where they have to go through this process. Maybe they have some doubts, and that'll affect whether, how effective the healing is being. I can only tell you this. I have seen countless positive results and people extremely happy with what they have received. Over 30, and this is all over a 30-year period, so you can imagine there's quite a few. To show you how things have changed from 1976, 77 when I started this, if I had mentioned healing to the medical establishment, and a matter of fact I did, and they kind of looked at me like I was crazy, I am now a volunteer at our local medical center 1 day a week, where we go in and we give healing to patients upon their request. And from what I understand, about 100 or so per month. And the hospital itself has 2 RNs that they are on full time to do nothing else but run the Healing Arts program. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think this would be there and continue on year after year if it wasn't effective? I mean, again, we see results, so we know that the things, that the principles that we learn about are true. Now, I'm going to include a couple of links to websites, one for the international site for Healing Touch, one for Reiki, which is another form of energy healing. And by the way, they are all energy healing, that you're taking and you're projecting energy from yourself or through yourself to the other person. To conclude this, I want to mention this one important fact. I have been involved in a lot of healings, okay? I have never healed anyone. I have been the conduit for that energy to pass through me to the person, to change the vibration at that spiritual level or astral level, however you want to look at it, and let that effect trickle down into the physical. So I've never healed anyone. I am the means by which the energy reaches that person and is projected to that person. And again, this is something that we're capable of, all of us. And this is why as many people have to become aware of this as possible. Think of the good that could be accomplished. Think of the people that can be helped and the people who, by developing these abilities, can spread this information and spread that help all over the world, as it is being done, by the way. Mine is just another effort.